I'm Anna.
I'm Leah. Oh, God.
I'm Carly.
Jenna.
Jessica.
And we are doing the study, Are You a Natural? So first, we're going to do an activity. We already pre-handed it out. So at this point, we would take like a minute for them to fill it out. And then I'll go on to talk about this stuff now. So first, you're going to take a look at all of your answers that you have. And you're going to look at which traits are genetic and which ones are environmental, or what you think are. And then you're going to look at the proportions of those. Do you think more are genetic? Do you think more are environmental? And then after we've kind of addressed that, we're going to go ahead and say this activity is an example of how you're both a result of your genetics and your environment. And when you first started soccer, say you were awful at it. So maybe you were your genetic predisposition was to be awful at soccer, but your environment, so you decided to go to practice a lot, and your mom made you healthy meals, and you watched a lot of soccer and did a lot of technique training, and you got better at it. So basically meaning, yeah, you had poor genetics, but your environment enhanced those genetics that you already had. Or it can be the other way around, and you can be predisposed to have amazing genetics and just increase from there on. So this concept of genetic versus environmental factors are basically what our study is examining. You can stay on this one.
Oh.
So our study, Are You a Natural, is basically about, like I said, genetic versus environmental factors. So the study looks at the impact of diverse environments on identical twins that were reared apart as children, and then they were reintroduced together as adults. And then they're comparing that data, the identical twin data, to twins that were reared together as well. So the difference in the similarity between twins that were reared together and twins that were reared apart were compared, and basically if they're very similar, that is indicating that the genetic factors appear to account for most of the variations in a variety of human characteristics that we'll examine and talk about a little bit later. And then how did they get to this point? Basically, they thought of this idea, and it seems pretty simple because you can take two humans who have the same exact genes, so two twins, separate them at birth, and then raise them in significantly different environments. But that's basically, how ethical is it to take two twins and separate them? So how they did this is they went to an adoption agency and found twins that were separated at birth, and then brought them back together as adults and did cognitive testing and things like that. And then this is relating to our class today because we have been covering genetics and epigenetics, and basically we're just going to piggyback on the subject and discuss how genetics are actually the main factor of us and how we're not really a result of our genes, or we are a result of our genes, not the way that our parents raised us. The methods.
So the methods begins with who were the participants in the study. As we said before, the participants in the study were monozygotic twins. A lot of the participants that we found not us, were separated early at birth so that we could get the idea of twins reared in different environments to see what the role of testing was, the role of environment was on genetics. They were given a lot of different tests. They did 50 hours of testing total, which was a lot. They did 4 personality traits, 3 altitude, 1 occupational interest inventory, 2 intelligence tests, and they did a lot of interviews to see how their family life was, what parenting style, life history, sexual history, and that kind of stuff. So they collected a lot of data to make up this database that they used. For data collection, they did a lot of standardized testing. So they really wanted to have the twins come in at the same time, do the same testing patterns, and take all the same tests, trying to have some of the same people do all the testing so that everything was exactly the same for each person, so that they could better gauge the developmental role of the environment. Okay, methods continued. What data did the researchers record? They did a lot of recording of different things that would affect how a person interacts with their environment. The dependent variable was different for each test, but overall the dependent variable was how they scored on each test, which was a direct result from their environment, which was the independent variable. These things were extensively tested by all of the tests that I listed earlier. And then the psychological construct, the researchers measured genetic impact by comparing the results of monozygotic twins raised together versus the results of monozygotic twins raised apart in different environments to see how the environment affected them as they developed. Perfect.
Love it.
Sorry.
Okay, so for the results, the first thing that we looked at were the predictions, and the researchers expected to find that the twins who were raised in different households throughout their life were going to have different personalities, and then like the twins that are raised together are going to be more alike, because like they predicted that the different environments and different parenting skills would affect how the twins would think and act. So their accuracy is shown on the next slide. So the researchers' predictions were not accurate, and the logic they had were that if the environments were the same for the MGT twins who shared the same environment, that as they grew up, they should be significantly more similar than the twins who were raised in different households. So the significance of this research that they found that the correlations for the characteristics were remarkably similar. So this indicates that the genetic factors appeared to account for most of the variations in a remarkable variety of human characteristics. So this was the table that was shown in our reading, and it shows that on the very left-hand side it has a similarity and between like the twins that were raised together and then raised apart, and the closer it is to 1, that's like how similar they are. So the lowest number that they had was a 0.78, which is pretty similar.
Mm-hmm. So now we're going to move on to like the discussion part. So why is this a landmark study, and why were we reading it? It goes to show the importance of the interesting outcomes of this. And it's interesting because it shows how people's genetic tendencies actually mold their environments more than the actual environment, or mold them more than their environment. So Are You a Natural became a landmark study in the sense that the debate of nature versus nurture shows that genetics play more of a role than, say, environment does in our developmental life. So one key criticism of this study, the next one, would be the debate of nature versus nurture. So is it really just genetics, like this study shows, that play the deepest role in our developmental life? Or is it environment also? So many can argue that our development can be formed by not just the genetics, like what this study showed, but it can be the environment also. So with that being said, we looked at another study, and the other study was named Shared Environmental Influences on Personality, a Combined Twin and Adoption Approach. So with this article, we see that this study showed not just twins, but the adoption also. So they compared the personalities between unrelated siblings, biological non-siblings, and twins without inclusion of parent offspring. So both of these samples included participants in the mid to late adolescent years, and they were done by a personality test, an MPQ personality test. So this MPQ personality test is a personality inventory derived from factor analysis. It measured 11 primary personality traits and 3 higher order factors. And higher order factors are represented both the behavioral and emotional sides of the personality. So some of these traits were positive emotionality, negative emotionality, and constraint. And so what you would do is you would have 4 choices: definitely true, probably false, or definitely false. And these different personalities, so those were the higher order ones, and some of the primary personality traits were social closeness, achievement, stress reaction, and having the positive feelings with their quote unquote parents, or in these cases, the adoption parents, their adopted parents. So evidence was found that environmental influences on twins and adolescents who are adopted. But this is particularly useful because it looked at twins, not just twins, but adoption also. So this has indicated that most traits were shown that shared environments does not contribute more significantly than the particular genes. And this supports our original study and the idea that genetic factors play the primary role in the human traits, and influences may come from the environment, but genetics is more so. So, the next slide. How is this still important today? Well, this shows that they took another study, not just twins, but twins and adoptive siblings, and it shows that the large majority or large percent of our traits are naturally occurring due to genetic variation. However, a small percent of variation does become based on environmental influences. So basically, the traits you are as a child, given the genes you're given, can be enhanced through environmental factors, but more likely are not. So, now what are we going to leave you with is look at your AYN poem and see, is there genetic and environmental factors, or is there just genetic? And think about that and really ponder on, okay, this nature and nurture debate, what is your side on it? We see the studies have shown what they think the research has shown, but what is your side on it, and what can we do to gain more knowledge about how we are formed and developed? So with that being said, we are going to...
So we're gonna do the Kahoot.
Yeah, but we're not going to do it right now. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, we'll have to do it for their cell phones. So we'll end with the Kahoot, and they'll take a quiz, and that'll be our presentation.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Bye, Tim.